There is something nobody talks about when it comes to a life of faith. It is the season when you've been walking with God for decades. You've prayed more prayers than you can count. You have shown up faithfully. You've given and served and believed. And then one day you look around and the silence is so heavy, it has a weight to it. The phone stops ringing the way it used to. The circle gets smaller. The doors you expected to open are shut. And you begin to wonder quietly in those early morning hours when it is just you and God, whether He has moved on without you.
That is exactly it. That is the part no one says out loud, because you feel like you should be past that kind of doubt by now. You've been in the faith long enough to know better, but the feeling is still there.
And here's the truth that most people never hear. That silence, that stillness, that season where nothing seems to be moving, that is not God stepping back. That is God stepping in.
Because the dark season feels like abandonment, but it has never been that. And that's exactly what we're unpacking today on the Wiser Hour.
Welcome to the Wiser Hour. Today we are talking about the dark season, the hidden place that every chosen soul passes through before God opens the doors they have been standing before for years.
And by the end of this conversation, you are going to understand why this season is not a punishment. It is a preparation. And more than that, it is evidence that God has not forgotten you. He is working.
This matters right now because there are people listening to this today who are in the middle of that season, and the enemy wants you to believe it is the end of your story. It is not. It is the chapter right before the door opens.
If this channel has been speaking to your heart, hit subscribe. We release new conversations every week for those who are still walking, still believing, still pressing forward. All right, let's get into it.
Long before any of us had language for this, wisdom teachers in every corner of the world noticed the same pattern in the lives of people who were being prepared for something significant. They observed it again and again, that the seasons of greatest outward stillness were always the seasons of the deepest inward transformation. Every tradition that studied this carefully came to the same conclusion. The darkness before the door is not a detour, it is the road.
But I think most people, when they are in the middle of it, do not feel like they are on the road. They feel like they have been left behind, like everyone else's life is moving forward and theirs has just stopped.
And that is exactly the feeling we need to talk about, because your mind will interpret stillness as failure. Your heart will read silence as rejection. That is not discernment. That is fear wearing the costume of wisdom.
You know what that looks like at this stage of life. You have given your best years. You have raised your children in the faith. You have served your church, your community, your family, and now you are sitting in a quieter house with a smaller circle, and you are wondering, was all of that enough? Did it matter? Is there anything left for me to do?
Those questions are not signs of weak faith. They are signs of a soul that has been faithful long enough to feel the weight of the waiting. And here's what every deep wisdom tradition discovered. The very fact that you are still asking, still pressing in, still showing up, that is the mark of someone who has not been forgotten. That is the mark of someone being prepared.
So why do we so easily believe that God is finished with us in our dark seasons?
Because we judge by what we can see, and the dark season hides everything that is actually happening. Look at Joseph, thrown into a pit by his own brothers, sold into slavery, forgotten in prison for years. Every single year in that darkness looked, from the outside, like a life that had fallen apart. His brothers thought they had ended his story. Pharaoh's butler forgot him. But God was not absent. He was not distracted. He was building something in Joseph that only that darkness could produce. The character, the patience, the discernment that a man ruling Egypt would one day require.
And Joseph had no way of knowing that in the pit.
None whatsoever. He could not see the palace from the prison. And neither can you see in this season what God is building in the hidden place. But God does not waste anything. Not the hard years, not the dark ones.
I think someone needed to hear that today. So what does the wisdom of the ages say about why God allows this and what He is actually doing in it?
There is something that happens in the soul of a person who has walked with God for decades. A settling, a stripping away, a kind of refinement surrounded by activity and noise and the comfort of easy answers. Wisdom teachers who spent their lives studying what happens to people in seasons of deep transformation found one thing consistently. The soul that emerges from the dark season is not the same soul that entered it. And that is not an accident. That is the entire point.
But in the middle of it, that feels like cold comfort. Because you are not sitting there thinking, I am being refined. You are sitting there thinking, did I do something wrong? Is God disappointed in me? Have I missed my window?
And that is the grief we have to honor before we can move through it, because those feelings are real. They are not signs of failure. They are signs of how much you have invested in your walk with God. You care, and the caring makes the silence harder.
You know what I think is one of the most painful parts of this for people who have been in the faith a long time? It is sitting in a church service, watching younger people receive blessings and breakthroughs, and trying to be genuinely happy for them while something quiet inside you wonders why it has been so long since you felt God move in your own life that way.
That moment right there, that private, honest struggle, is one that so few people will admit to. But God sees it, and He does not condemn you for it. He meets you in it.
So what you're saying is, those years I thought God had forgotten me, He was actually closest in those moments.
That is exactly what Scripture points to. The book of Joel says that God will restore the years the locusts have eaten. He does not just replace what was lost, He redeems it. He makes the lost years themselves part of the harvest. And Job, who sat in more darkness than most of us will ever face, who lost everything, who had no explanation, who wrestled honestly with God, received a restoration in his latter years that exceeded everything that came before. The dark season was not the end of Job's story. It was the turning point.
The cost of believing the wrong story is steep, though, because if you spend your latter years convinced that God is done with you, you stop showing up, you stop believing, you stop making yourself available, and you miss what He was still preparing. If you have been in a dark season, maybe a long one, and you have wondered whether God still sees you, drop it in the comments. We genuinely read every one. You are not alone in this.
Because here's what the dark season produces that nothing else can. It produces a depth of faith that is no longer dependent on feelings or circumstances or what other people can see. It produces the kind of faith that has been tested and has held. And that kind of faith is not ordinary. It is the kind of faith God entrusts with the next chapter.
So, what does it actually look like to walk through this with faith?
What we are talking about is not simply enduring the dark season. It is cooperating with it. There is a difference between surviving a hard season and allowing it to do what God sent it to do. And cooperation requires some specific things that go against every instinct we have when we are hurting.
Because every instinct when you are in pain is to do something, to fix it, to explain it, to make it make sense to the people around you. The idea of just trusting quietly, that is genuinely hard.
The first practice is this: stop announcing the season. Joseph did not go through the prison explaining his story to every new cellmate, rehearsing his dreams, trying to keep his identity alive in other people's eyes. He held what God gave him quietly until the time came. There are things God has spoken over your life, promises, callings, words He has placed in your spirit that need to be protected right now. Not because they aren't real, because they are still growing. And things that are still growing need to be sheltered, not exposed.
That one is harder than it sounds, because when you are hurting, you want people to know what you have been through. You want the story to make sense to someone.
And there is a time for that, but not every promise is for every ear. Wisdom knows the difference between sharing for connection and sharing for validation. One builds, the other leaks. The second practice, trust the underground work. A seed does not produce in the light. It produces underground, in the dark, in the hidden place. What God is building in you right now cannot be seen yet by anyone, including you, but the work is real. The roots going down in this season are what will hold the branches when the harvest comes. Do not despise the hiddenness. It is doing something the visible seasons never could.
I think that is the one most people will skip, because we live in a world where if it's not visible, it's not real. and this requires trusting what you cannot see.
The third practice, remain available. Even in his darkest hour, Joseph was faithful with what was directly in front of him. He served well in Potiphar's house. He served well in prison. He did not wait for the blessing to arrive before he brought his full self to the moment he was in. And that faithfulness in the hidden place was exactly what God was watching. Your latter years are not a waiting room. They are an active assignment.
I think a lot of people in their 60s and 70s here remain available and wonder, available for what? When you cannot see the open door, what does availability even look like?
It looks like showing up to your church even when the service doesn't move you the way it used to. It looks like praying even when the words feel thin. It looks like keeping your hands open, not clenched around what you have lost or what you expected, but open to whatever God places there next. This week, just one thing. Find one place in your life where you have been withholding your full presence because the season has been hard, and show up there completely, not for what you will get from it, as an act of faith. Okay, let's bring it all together. Here is the deepest truth this entire conversation has been building toward. The dark season is not evidence that God has abandoned you. It is evidence that He trusts you with something that cannot be produced any other way. The faith that comes out of genuine darkness is not the faith that depends on feelings or visible proof. It is the faith that has been stripped down to its foundation and found that the foundation holds.
Sitting with this today, what shifted for me is the realization that I have been measuring God's presence by the wrong things, by the feeling of His nearness, by the visible movement in my circumstances. But faithfulness is not always loud. Sometimes it is the quiet work happening underground, in the hidden place, in the years that felt like they were going nowhere.
Regardless of what your road has looked like, regardless of what you gave up, what you lost, what you are still carrying quietly, God does not waste anything. Not the hard years, not the dark ones, not one single day of the road that brought you here.
The dark season is not the end of your story. In God's hands, it never has been. And the fact that you are still here, still seeking, still pressing in, that is not a small thing. That is everything.
If this conversation spoke to something in you today, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below. Your words matter to this community. We read them.
Next time, we are going to talk about something that quietly troubles a lot of faithful people. The fear that the people they love most may not carry the faith forward after they are gone. That one is going to go deep.
Until next time, keep questioning, keep growing. This is the Wiser Hour.